introduce two friends of the show and two of what I would say are the most ethical journalists in this market. Chief political reporter and host of At Issue, Tom Hauser from KSTP Channel 5, and reporter from Fox 9, Courtney Godfrey. You hear her sound in our show Open. So two very special guests. Thank you both for joining us together today.
Good morning, Roshini.
Yeah, it's an honor to be with Tom. He's one of the best in the business, so I'm just honored to be included next to his name.
Oh, please, Courtney, come on.
It's such a love fest, the text that we're going before we started today over the weekend or getting ready to go on with you two, the wonderful words you each said about each other in text to me. So I'm glad that you were here together. Let's get right at it, though. Tom, you were in so many of those press briefings. I know, Courtney, you've been in some of those with the governor. He had many last week. He handed out some tough words on Wednesday, shutting down restaurants for 4 weeks, health clubs, which is really coming down hard on people. And I just saw last night that the CEO of Lifetime has filed a request for information on actual numbers. So what can you tell us about the kinds of questions? And do you really feel like he's answering them when you ask those questions?
Yeah, Roshini, I think he does answer the questions, or at least tries to answer them. Does he answer them to the satisfaction of all of the people with all of the different opinions in Minnesota? Certainly not. There is such a diversity of opinion about what should be shut down and what shouldn't in terms of trying to slow the spread of COVID-19. Some of the things seem to make perfect sense. Some, as even the governor acknowledged on Friday, seem to be counterintuitive, like shutting down health clubs, where relatively a small number of cases, and again, I'm talking about relatively. I'm not saying there haven't been any cases associated with health clubs, but I think the latest figure I saw was 700 and some out of several dozen outbreaks. But that's a relatively small number. A lot of people, and again, like I said, including the governor, say it's counterintuitive to shut down places where people go to try to get healthy, both their mental health and their physical health. So clearly he's walking a fine line here, and he can't please everybody.
Right, he absolutely can't. Courtney, one texter is asking this of you both. Are you ever told what questions you can and cannot ask when you go into these kinds of press conferences?
Absolutely not. I mean, and no question is off the table. Like Tom said, the governor and Jen Malcolm, the health commissioner, will answer their questions to the best of their ability. And we can and we do throw any question that comes to us at them. And, they take a lot of questions. I mean, if you listen, these press conferences are streamed on the radio most of the time, and they take quite a few questions. I think Tom was spot on. It's not always what the answer that certain people want to hear, depending on your personal bias. But no, absolutely not. I'm never told what questions I can or can't ask.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would just echo that. The governor's office has never said you can ask this, you can't ask that, you can come into the briefing, you can't. It's that just doesn't happen. And sometimes when we ask questions, people think we're asking a question. We're just trying to elicit a response. Where the question is not necessarily how we feel about something. I'm sure Courtney does too. I get a ton of emails and tweets and different messages on social media. Can you ask the governor this? Can you ask the governor that? And when I get a critical mass of those questions around certain topics from a broad spectrum of people, those are questions that our viewers want answers to. And so I will ask them on their behalf, because frankly, that's the role of a journalist, is to get answers on the public's behalf, because we have access to the governor and other state leaders that most people do not have.
So earlier in the show, I was quoting from the First Amendment to the Constitution, which includes the freedom of the press, and now we call it the media, and the reporting media, which you two are part of. You are trying to do things neutrally, objectively, but one of your roles is to question all three branches of government. How do you do that separately from just these press conferences? Where are some of the other places you go to get information so that you're also fulfilling that role of questioning legislators and questioning the governor?
I mean, I would say that there's great accessibility with the health department, with lawmakers, and I think Tom would agree.
Yes, so we have access to all of those people, but again, those are people who are in government. So we also try to talk to people who are outside of government because they're the ones being impacted the most by the decisions being made by government. And so I'm talking about the people who operate health clubs, the people who operate bars and restaurants. We have a lot of industries that are not going to be the same for years and years to come. Many of these businesses, whether they be a small or a large gym or health club organization, but in particular the smaller restaurants and bars, many of them are never coming back. And they may be replaced years from now by other entrepreneurs who decide to get into that business. But it's going to be very hard to get people into those businesses in the future when they know how government, at a moment's notice, can shut them down. So we also need access to those people so that their voices can be heard by the decision makers in government.
We're
I would say,
talking
Roshini, it's like
ahead.
we talk to, if you hear my baby crying in the bathroom, that's just background, that's just real life.
And if you hear a baby in the background of me, then I got big problems.
Yes, you do.
I would say, we talk to everyone, right? We talk to patients, people who have suffered COVID themselves, and then we talk to the business owners who are suffering in a different way. And I think we let the viewers decide. We put the raw numbers out there. We talk to the business owners. We talk to people who have had it. We talk to the naysayers, and we put it all out there and we let you decide. We never tell you what to think. I think our viewers are smart people. So,
well, on that note, and I'm talking with Courtney Godfrey from Fox 9 and Tom Hauser from KSTP Channel 5. On that note, Courtney, and I'd love both of your takes on this, how do you make sure you keep your own opinions out? Because between social media as well as on the air, I am hearing reporters, not talk show hosts like me, but reporters inserting opinions. I always say adjectives are bad. If you're using adjectives, that's also over on that side of inserting opinion.
Well, I'm sure Courtney is the same way. I never, whether it be on Twitter or on my At Issue Facebook page or even my personal social media, I never offer an opinion. I will offer my stories. I will offer quotes that I hear at news conferences with the governor and others. But those are not my opinions. Those are what they are telling us. And so very often people mistake that for our opinion. And at a governor's news conference, I will report everything he says, not just responses to questions I ask, but if Courtney asks it or somebody else does, because, again, that is our job, is to get this information out to the public, out to viewers, because we have access that they don't. But, again, I don't pretend that viewers have any interest in my opinion. Half the time, I'm not even interested in my opinion. So why should they care? So I just try to report the facts as best I can and as thoroughly as I can.
Yeah, Roshini, I think, I see the same social media posts that you're seeing, and I cringe because we are trained to be neutral. And I think it's just I feel like it's innately in me to, get all sides and stand somewhere in the middle and just present the facts and let the viewer decide. And I think we do the best we can in doing that. And, again, you put it out there and you let everybody decide. And sometimes, I mean, take a look at Tom.
And it's hard because you can't control what those who are sharing opinions are doing. And sometimes, they're your colleagues or competitors, and it's hard to control that for sure.
Yeah, well, Courtney brings up my Twitter feed where I often get attacked just for presenting facts, and I'm usually amused by it. And it is remarkable how often I am called a far left liberal or a far right wing nut. It's remarkable. But a good example was a news conference the governor had. I can't remember if it was an MDH call or if it was an in-person briefing. They all run together after a while. I asked the governor about, I think it was 2 days before these new restrictions went into effect. I said to the governor back on October 26th, I asked you about reports I was hearing that in mid-November you were going to shut down winter and fall sports, bars and restaurants. And he just categorically denied that. He said, no, that's not going to happen. We haven't talked about it with that degree of specificity. There are no plans to do that. And a week or two before that, he had even said he agreed with a WHO official who had said lockdowns and shutdowns really are not that effective and sometimes do more harm than good. So I asked these questions as follow-ups to things we had asked weeks ago, and people decide to attack me both by email and on social media because they think that was my opinion. I'm just trying to hold a government official accountable for what he says before and what he's saying now. And even the governor understands that, and he's willing to take those questions.
Right. And folks, that's Tom's job. That's Courtney's job. I mean, and they are doing it. It's asking the questions as if they are us because they're in that room and they're asking questions so we can get answers. John is on the line from Watertown. John, what do you have to say?
Hey, good morning, Roshini. I would like you to question some of the numbers. Our local doctor was questioning some of the numbers also and kind of got chastised by the medical board. But when they come out and say 51 people died today in the state of Minnesota, you never know how many people actually died in the state from COVID, period. I mean, I have a problem with if 51 people died, they all died from COVID, and that's the total of people who died in the state. That means 100% died from COVID. Well, that's almost statistically impossible. So
that's a great point, John. When you get those numbers, Tom and Courtney, I mean, I'm finding that also very interesting. Could it be that those are from all deaths of any kind, or are they specifically COVID deaths?
No, those deaths that they report are specifically COVID deaths. However they define that, and there's a big dispute about do you die from COVID or do you die with COVID? If you're 99 years old and you have COVID and you die, did you die with it or of it? And that is one of the great debates that will probably not be settled for years until we look back at all of the figures. But I think what the caller might have been getting at is on any given day, we'll say, okay, 67 people died today or died yesterday. And that is not necessarily true because sometimes the death reports lag a little bit. It can be by a few days. In some cases, it might even be weeks later that something gets coded as a COVID death. But ultimately, it's the same number. It's just not. So I've cautioned, like at our station, our producers not to say, 67 more Minnesotans died today because of COVID. Because I say, no, they didn't. That was the number reported today. That doesn't mean they all happened today or yesterday. So it's a nuance, but it's an important one so that we can track it on a day-by-day basis. But ultimately, the bottom line is we have still lost a little over 3,000 Minnesotans to COVID.
All right. And accuracy is so important, Courtney. How do you want, this is my final question, both of you, and I really appreciate Courtney Godfrey from Fox 9, Tom Hauser from KSTP Channel 5 being with us today as my media panel, because it's not easy. You are covering some really controversial issues, making people, not always happy. I mean, the people that you come across are not always happy. How do you handle those emotions, Courtney, of your subjects when you find them, but yet you're still trying to root out the facts?
Well, emotions, we're just kind of built differently, right? So we have to put our emotions to the side a lot and just get to the facts and report the facts. So, simply put, that's what we do. I think it's a tough situation because there are people on so many sides of this, and I think that Tom would say the same. We just try and report the truth, try and report the facts, and let the viewer decide.
Yeah, and it's hard because the viewers and even your listeners, Roshini, we are such a broad spectrum of views and beliefs. You can't please every single one of them. And I do have some sympathy for the governor and the health commissioner, because they have to deliver a lot of very unpopular news, and they have to make a lot of unpopular decisions, and they get vilified on social media, as I'm sure you have both seen. And really, they're trying to do what they think is best. Does everybody agree with that? No. Will they ultimately be proven correct down the road? We don't know. So at this point, the governor is the elected leader of the state. He's the one making these decisions. His health commissioner is somebody he's appointed. And so it's in their hands. All we can do as reporters and journalists is report to Minnesotans what they are doing. And at some point, they'll have to decide whether they think it was right or not. And they'll have an opportunity at the ballot box in 22.
All right. We'll leave it at that. Tom Hauser, he is chief political reporter at KSTP. He's also host of At Issue, which I'm not saying I want you to turn him on today at 10 and step away from listening to me, but he is on Sundays at 10 a.m. Courtney Godfrey is enjoying her new little baby and is a reporter at Fox 9. It's always great to have the two of you on. Thank you for sharing insight today.
Well, the great thing is we all got to enjoy Courtney's baby today.
I know. He had a final word there, I heard.
And hey, that's a good reminder that we're all human beings, right? So
Absolutely.
when you want to send us emails and tweets saying horrible things, please remember that we are human beings with families that we want to get home to at the end of the day, too.
Yeah, and you know what? These are the folks you want doing it right and doing it accurately. Even if you don't like what they have to report, they are trying to bring us the facts. So thank you both for doing your job day in and day out. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Roshini.
Always good to talk with you. Yeah, thank you.
All right.